Once you stop lying to yourself, everything becomes clearer in a way that's almost uncomfortable. The confusion fades, but what replaces it is heavier, sharper. There's no room left for doubt, and that certainty cuts deeper than suspicion ever did. I didn't need more signs. I needed proof. Not because I didn't believe it, but because once I saw it clearly, there would be no going back. No pretending. No second guessing. Just truth, raw and permanent. So I stopped reacting and started planning. I adjusted my routine slightly. Came home earlier some days, later on others. Watched how she responded to unpredictability. She didn't question it. That told me something. Someone who has nothing to hide notices changes. Someone hiding something adapts. Her patterns didn't break. They shifted around me. That's how I knew it wasn't casual. It wasn't random. It was structured. One evening, she said she was going out. Nothing unusual about that anymore. Her reasons had become vague over time: errands, meeting a friend, needing air. I stopped asking follow-up questions because her answers had already stopped meaning anything. But this time, I followed. Not closely. Not recklessly. Just enough distance to stay invisible. She didn't wander. She didn't hesitate. She went straight to a place like she had done it before. But something still didn't sit right. It wasn't just the affair. It was everything around it. The timing. The robbery. The behavior of those men. So I shifted my focus to him. It didn't take long to find a connection. Not direct. Not obvious. But close enough. People leave traces without realizing it. Conversations, associations, overlapping circles. And once you start looking with the right intention, those traces start forming lines. And those lines led somewhere I didn't expect, but also did. He wasn't just someone she met. He was someone who knew more than he should. About the house. About routines. About me. That's when the final piece locked into place. The robbery wasn't random. It wasn't even just about theft. It was connected to him. And if it was connected to him, then it was connected to her. I didn't confront her immediately. I needed to hear it from her. Not because I doubted it, but because I wanted to see how far she would go to deny it. That night, I didn't wait for the right moment. There isn't one. I just asked. Simple. Direct. Who is he? For a second, there was nothing. Just silence. Then confusion. Or something that looked like it. She asked what I meant. I repeated the question. Same tone. Same calm. That's when I saw it. The shift. It was small, almost invisible. But it was there. The exact moment she realized this wasn't a guess. This was knowledge. She tried to deny it at first. Said I was imagining things. Said I was stressed. Said I was overthinking. The same words I had been telling myself. Hearing them from her felt different. It felt deliberate. So I told her what I saw. Not everything. Just enough. Her silence did the rest. Because silence, when the truth is already exposed, is an answer. She didn't break down immediately. She didn't confess all at once. It came in pieces. Fragmented. Incomplete. Carefully chosen. Yes, she knew him. Yes, they had been talking. Yes, it went further than that. But every answer felt controlled. Like she was giving me just enough to respond to what I knew, but holding back the rest. So I asked the only question that mattered. What does he have to do with that night? That's where everything changed. Because for the first time, she hesitated in a way that wasn't calculated. It was real. And that hesitation told me more than any confession could. She said she didn't plan anything. Said she didn't know it would happen like that. Said she never thought it would go that far. But those words don't exist without something behind them. You don't say it wasn't supposed to happen unless something was supposed to happen. And that's when it hit me fully. This wasn't just betrayal. This was involvement. Maybe she didn't plan every detail. Maybe she didn't expect the exact outcome. But she opened the door to it. In one way or another, she made it possible. And that's enough. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't lose control. Because anger would have meant I still cared in the same way. What I felt instead was something colder. Something final. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I didn't recognize the person in front of me anymore. Not because she changed overnight. But because I had finally stopped ignoring who she had become. Everything made sense now. Her distance. Her secrecy. Her calmness that night. She wasn't surprised because a part of her already knew something was coming. Maybe not exactly how. Maybe not exactly when. But enough to not react like someone innocent. And that realization settled deeper than anything else. Because it meant the danger didn't come from outside. It came from within. The person I trusted the most was the reason my life had been put at risk. Not accidentally. Not completely unknowingly. But through choices. And once you see that clearly, there's no repairing it. No explaining it away. No returning to what was. There's only one thing left. Accepting that the damage isn't just emotional. It's irreversible. There's a moment after everything is exposed where the noise inside your head just stops. Not because things are resolved, but because there's nothing left to question. The truth settles in, heavy and unmoving, and all the emotions that once felt urgent lose their edge. That's where I found myself. Not angry. Not confused. Just clear. She tried to explain, of course. Not all at once, not in a way that made full sense, but enough to build a version of events that she hoped would soften what had already hardened inside me. She said it started with conversation. That it wasn't meant to become anything serious. That she felt alone long before anything actually happened. The usual sequence of justifications, arranged carefully to shift the weight away from intention and onto circumstance. I listened. Not because I believed her, but because I wanted to hear how she framed it. Where she placed the blame. How she justified crossing lines that don't get crossed by accident. She said he understood her. That he paid attention in ways I hadn't. That things between us had already been fading, and she didn't know how to fix it. What she didn't say directly, but what was obvious, was that instead of fixing it, she replaced it. And somewhere in that replacement, she let someone else get close enough to know things that should have never left this house. That's the part that mattered. Not the emotional gap. Not the excuses. But the fact that she allowed access. Access to routines. Access to space. Access to details that turned a private life into something exposed. She kept insisting she didn't know it would lead to that night. That whatever he was involved in, she wasn't part of the plan. That she never agreed to anything dangerous. But those words don't erase the chain of events. You don't need to plan something directly to be responsible for setting it in motion. Every message, every meeting, every piece of information shared without thinking, it all builds toward something. And in this case, it built toward two men standing inside our house like they belonged there. That's not a coincidence. That's consequence. I asked her one last time if she knew who they were. She hesitated again. Not long, but enough. Then she said she didn't. I believed that part. Not because she was honest, but because it fit. She didn't need to know them directly. She just needed to give the right person enough. And he handled the rest. That realization closed the final gap. There was nothing left to uncover. Nothing left to confirm. Just the aftermath. We sat in the same space, but whatever connection used to exist was gone. Not damaged. Not strained. Gone. I looked around the house, and for the first time, it didn't feel like mine. Not because of what was taken, but because of what had been revealed. Every corner held a memory that no longer meant the same thing. Every quiet moment now carried a different weight. This wasn't where trust lived anymore. It was where it ended. She asked what I was going to do. Not in a confrontational way. Not even defensively. Just quietly. Like she already knew the answer but needed to hear it out loud. And the truth was, there wasn't much to decide. Some things don't leave room for options. I told her I was done. No long speech. No dramatic explanation. Just a simple statement that matched exactly how I felt. Finished. She didn't argue. Didn't try to stop me. That said more than anything else she had said so far. Because when someone knows they've crossed a line that can't be undone, they don't fight the outcome. They accept it. I didn't leave immediately. Not because I was unsure, but because I needed to detach properly. There's a difference between physically leaving and mentally disconnecting. And I needed both. Over the next few days, everything became procedural. Conversations reduced to necessities. Movements became separate. Timing no longer aligned. It was like watching a structure dismantle itself piece by piece without resistance. And in that process, I noticed something strange. The pain I expected to feel didn't come the way I thought it would. There was no overwhelming grief. No emotional collapse. Just a steady, quiet understanding. Because the truth is, I had already started losing her long before that night. I just didn't admit it. That night didn't destroy anything. It exposed what was already broken. And once something is exposed like that, you can't rebuild it on the same foundation. Before I left for good, I walked through the house one last time. Not for closure. Just to see it clearly. No illusions. No attachments. Just walls, space, and the remains of something that used to mean more. I didn't think about the robbers. Not anymore. Because they weren't the real cause. They were just the visible part of something deeper. Something that had been happening quietly, long before they ever stepped inside. At the door, I paused for a second. Not out of hesitation, but out of recognition. Recognition of what this place had become. And what it no longer was. Then I left. No looking back. No second thoughts. Just distance. Because in the end, the truth was simple. The real robbery didn't happen that night. It happened slowly, over time. In silence. In small choices. In moments I ignored. And by the time I noticed it, there was nothing left worth protecting. I used to think silence meant peace. That if a house was quiet, it was safe. But over time, I realized silence can also mean something is slowly dying right in front of you, and you're the only one pretending not to see it. My wife and I still lived under the same roof, still shared the same bed, still followed the same routines. But something had shifted. Not suddenly, not dramatically. It was subtle. The kind of change you don't notice at first because it hides inside ordinary moments. She stopped asking how my day was. At first, I thought she was just tired. Then she stopped waiting for me at dinner. Then she started eating alone. Conversations turned into one-word replies. Eye contact became rare, almost avoided. It felt like I was living with someone who had already left, but her body hadn't caught up yet. I told myself I was overthinking. People go through phases. Marriages have ups and downs. That's what I kept repeating in my head every time something didn't feel right. But there were signs. Small ones at first. Her phone was always in her hand. Not casually, protectively. The screen would light up, and she'd glance at it in a way that didn't match normal curiosity. It was intentional. Focused. Almost careful. If I walked into the room, she'd tilt the screen away just slightly. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to make me notice. Late at night, when she thought I was asleep, I could hear the faint tapping. Slow, deliberate typing. Sometimes followed by a pause, then a soft exhale. Once, I opened my eyes just enough to see her face lit up by the screen. She was smiling. Not a big smile. Not laughter. Just something quiet and personal. Something I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. I should have asked her then. I should have said something. But I didn't. Because asking questions means being ready for answers. And deep down, I wasn't ready. Instead, I collected moments. Stored them away like evidence I wasn't prepared to present. The way she started dressing differently when going out, even for simple errands. The way she began locking the bathroom door when she never used to. The way her tone changed when certain notifications appeared. One night, I casually asked who she was texting so late. She didn't even hesitate. Just said, "No one important." No one important. That answer stayed with me longer than it should have. Because if it was truly no one, why hide it like it was everything? Days turned into weeks, and the distance between us became something physical. You could feel it in the air. The house didn't feel like ours anymore. It felt like a place we both happened to stay in, separately. And then there were the silences. Not peaceful ones. Heavy ones. The kind that press against your chest. We'd sit in the same room, not speaking, not even looking at each other. It was like we were both waiting for something neither of us wanted to start. I noticed she stopped reacting to things. No surprise, no frustration, no warmth. Just neutral. Controlled. Like she was carefully managing what she let me see. That scared me more than anything else. Because indifference is worse than anger. Anger means something still matters. Indifference means it's already gone. The night everything happened didn't feel special at first. It was just another quiet evening. She was distant, like always. I tried to start a conversation, something simple, but it ended before it even began. Short answers. No engagement. I gave up halfway through. Later, we went to bed. Or at least pretended to. I remember lying there, staring into the dark, feeling that same familiar weight in my chest. Something was wrong. Not just in our relationship, but deeper. Like I was missing a piece of something important, and I couldn't figure out what it was. At some point, I must have drifted off. The noise woke me. A sharp, unnatural sound. Not loud, but wrong. Like something forcing its way into a place it didn't belong. At first, I thought I imagined it. But then it came again. Clearer this time. A movement. A shift. Something inside the house. My body went still. Completely alert. I turned my head slightly. My wife was already awake. That's what caught me off guard. She wasn't startled. She wasn't confused. She was just awake. Eyes open. Listening. For a second, neither of us moved. Then we heard it again. Footsteps. Not ours. Not imagined. Real. Slow. Controlled. Intentional. Someone was inside the house. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I sat up, trying to process what was happening, trying to convince myself there had to be another explanation. There wasn't. A shadow moved across the hallway. Then another. 2 figures. Both masked. Both calm. They didn't rush. They didn't panic. They walked like they already knew where they were going. One of them glanced in our direction. And for a split second, everything felt wrong. Not just the situation. Not just the fear. But the way he looked at her. Because it wasn't random. It wasn't the look of a stranger. It was recognition. And in that moment, I realized something that made the fear even worse. These men didn't just break into my house. They came here for a reason. The police said it looked like a standard break-in. Forced entry, 2 intruders, partial theft. They asked questions, took notes, checked the obvious places, and left with the same conclusion people always reach when they don't see what's underneath: wrong place, wrong time. But it didn't feel random. I replayed that night over and over in my head, not the fear, not the noise, but the details. The way they moved. The way they didn't rush. The way they ignored certain things that any real robber would grab first. It wasn't panic-driven. It was precise. And then there was her. She answered every question calmly. Too calmly. No shaking voice, no confusion, no lingering fear. Just clear, controlled responses like she had already rehearsed them somewhere in her mind. When the officer asked if she recognized anything unusual, she said no without even thinking. That bothered me more than the break-in itself. Because I saw her that night. I saw the moment her eyes were open before the noise even fully registered. I saw how she didn't react like someone caught off guard. And I couldn't unsee it. After the police left, the house felt different. Not violated, exposed. Like something hidden had been pulled slightly into the light, but not enough for anyone else to notice. We tried to go back to normal. Or at least, she did. She cleaned up small things, rearranged items, threw away what she said was broken or disturbed. I watched her move through the house like she was restoring order, but it didn't feel like repair. It felt like control. I started paying attention in a way I never had before. Not just to what she said, but what she avoided. Every time I brought up the robbery, she redirected the conversation. If I mentioned the way they moved, she'd focus on what they took. If I asked about the moment they looked into the room, she'd say she didn't remember clearly. But I remembered clearly. Too clearly. There was a hesitation in one of them. A pause that didn't make sense unless something or someone mattered. And it wasn't me. Days passed, but the tension didn't fade. It changed shape. It settled into something quieter, more dangerous. Suspicion. I started noticing patterns. Her phone usage increased, but not openly. It became more calculated. She'd step out of the room to reply. She'd keep conversations short when I was nearby, then disappear for longer periods when I wasn't. One night, I walked into the room without making noise. She didn't hear me. Her screen was open, and for a brief second, I saw it. A name I didn't recognize. No contact photo. Just a name and a message that disappeared the second she noticed me. She locked the phone instantly, like a reflex. I didn't say anything. I just nodded like I hadn't seen it. But that moment stayed with me. Because it confirmed something I had been trying to ignore. There was someone else. I didn't know who. I didn't know how deep it went. But I knew enough. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I started connecting things. The timing. The behavior. The shift in her attitude before the robbery. The calmness during it. The way those men moved through the house like they weren't discovering it for the first time. It started forming a pattern I couldn't unsee. One evening, while she was in the shower, her phone lit up again. Same name. This time, I didn't hesitate. I picked it up. Locked. But notifications don't lie. Even with limited preview, there was enough. Short messages. Direct. Familiar. Not formal. Not distant. Personal. I felt something twist inside me, not sudden rage, but something colder. Something more controlled. Like my mind had stopped resisting the truth and started accepting it piece by piece. I put the phone back exactly where it was. When she came out, I acted normal. That was the hardest part. Pretending not to know when everything inside you is shifting. From that point on, I stopped being just a husband. I became an observer. I watched how she moved. When she left. How long she stayed gone. I noticed the small details I used to overlook. The consistency in her inconsistency. And slowly, something else became clear. The robbery wasn't separate from this. It was connected. I couldn't prove it yet. Not fully. But the feeling was there, growing stronger with every detail that didn't fit. They didn't take everything. They skipped valuables that were easy to grab. They went straight to specific places. Drawers. Corners. Spots that only someone familiar would know. That's not luck. That's information. And information doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from someone inside. One night, I tested something. I casually mentioned moving some important items to a different place in the house. I said it out loud, not directly to her, just enough for her to hear. She didn't react. But later that night, I noticed her checking that exact spot. Quietly. Carefully. Like she needed to confirm something. That was the moment everything shifted. Because it wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was alignment. Her behavior. The robbery. The unknown contact. It all pointed in one direction. I stayed awake longer that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence that once felt peaceful. Now it felt like pressure. Like something was about to break. And for the first time, I stopped asking myself if something was wrong. I started asking how far it had already gone. Because whatever this was, it didn't start with that night. That night was just when it crossed into my world. And deep down, I knew the truth wasn't going to be simple. It was going to be worse than I imagined.